Hello, this is Come Home America with Nick Hancock, the show that narrates and navigates the journey through America's crises in identity and order. And on today's show, happy Columbus Day, everyone. It's the forbidden holiday. And so, in sort of the Barbara Streisand effect sort of way, it's a holiday once again. I remember growing up, and it was just a day where the local TV commercials changed for a week. They were different this time. Cal Worthington had a different the diamond guy had a different commercial. Whoever it was, they had a different ad that week. So it was a very it was just a day for sales, maybe a day you got off school. I think I was out of school. And it didn't mean a whole lot. And now Columbus Day, slowly but surely, is coming back. It's making a comeback. So a great comeback for a great holiday and a great man, Christopher Columbus. But this show isn't going to be, some run through history, look back at the life of Christopher Columbus or whatever. It almost doesn't matter in the grand scheme. Not everyone today is going to honor his legacy and go and read about him or something. But it really is another reflection of this culture war, which this show really emerges out of. The reason why this show is necessary, the reason why I call out Come Home America, is because we have drifted so far and in different directions. I mean, the country is shattered, and there are two polar opposites in a sense. There's a right and a left, but we find that it just goes so deep, and there's so many. It's not a clean break. There's a lot of little fractures. So Columbus Day brings a lot of that to light. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about just some other news. A leftist has shot and killed a Trump supporter in Denver at a Patriot rally, and new details are emerging out of that. So I'll have some of that for you. And we're going to talk about, again, sort of people's reaction to this. How are they responding? What are the incentives that are driving people to, pack up and move, or maybe take on a new political agenda with more efficacy than simply voting the bums out and voting new bums in? So we are going all over past, present, future today, and it's going to be a good show. So thank you once again to our new subscribers, those sharing these posts. I saw Liberty Revolution on Facebook sharing Come Home America. So thank you to Liberty Revolution. Please go check them out. And, we are still growing. I'm on Spotify. I'm on BitChute, SoundCloud. You can find us on Facebook, as I said, and I'll be expanding that reach as well. Comment below what social media platform you're using as an alternative to Facebook and Twitter, in case those really become just impossible places to deal with. I think going into the election, we see a little bit more social media censorship going on, and so I have an email list that people can sign up for. I think email is going to be a nice security net, a safety net for us. But are there other social media platforms that you're on that Come Home America and I should be on? Let me know in the comments below. All right, into the show. So as I said, it's Columbus Day, and in some parts of the country, it's becoming Indigenous Peoples Day. But we all know what this means. There's no like real organic groundswell, grassroots movement to better understand Indigenous history and right the wrongs of before. This is about what's become known as cancel culture. And so it's not about, a revision of history. It's just an all-out wiping out of history, a vilification, a demonization of the foundation of this country. And, that is what I have a real problem with, because we are not the same country we used to be. We can't go back, really. We can't just pretend that, the country, the way it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, is where we can just go back to and force everyone else to come back with us. The most impossible task of all. But at the same time, we also can't say that no history matters, that the only way forward is just a blank slate, year zero revolution. Why not have, and this will round out the show with this, but why not just have us all go our own ways, huh? Why not have a nice breakup, a congenial breakup, and maybe in the end that'll help actually bring us closer together, help us speak more clearly to one another without the perceived threat that one side or the other is going to totally take over. And, I've said on this show that I'm voting for Donald Trump for president, and it's it's bewildering to me that people feel as if that's more imposing on them than a Biden presidency would be imposing on me. If it's not equal, then I would say it's less imposing to have a Trump presidency on the country than to have a Biden presidency. And a Trump presidency allows more decentralization to happen, more things to work out on the local level. Even if the sacred cow of Roe v. Wade were overturned at the Supreme Court, you'd still have state and local laws, running the abortion policies, as an example. But we're getting off track a little bit. We'll get back into that. I'm actually not super excited about the presidential election, although I am, because the spectacle is so great and big. You have to enjoy it. We only have 3 weeks left. But I'm more excited about my own gubernatorial race. So we're going to talk about the Indiana race for governor, where there might be a surprise victory in store. So we will talk about that. Columbus Day. Okay. What was it? It was half a millennia ago that Columbus arrived in the Caribbean. So not even like North America, but somehow it's, it sort of gets mixed in the mythology. Everyone's third grade level understanding of Christopher Columbus is he came to America. Not quite, but essentially it's Western civilization being introduced to the Americas, to this, what was called the New World. And what I believe Russell Kirk has, Russell Kirk, a conservative writer of old, he's an old historic, Russell Kirk, he was around in the 50s or something. Okay. Russell Kirk wrote that it was really an old world, not a new world, right, in terms of their technology, in terms of their civilization. So you have a clash of civilization half a millennia ago, and people try to take this historical, to call it historical is an understatement, right? 2020 is a historical election. 2016 was a historical election. But 1492, like Columbus, I won't finish the rhyme, but you understand that is meta-historical. And so this clash of civilizations, people want to judge Columbus based on some standard of today, some great moral standard of today. Well, of course, these are not real standards. These are double standards that these people who push this don't even live up to. They're sort of yielded as weapons against their enemies to put them in line. This sort of politically correct meta narrative of the world that suits their strategy for power. So it's not a real moral standard, but nonetheless, they try and fit that over the world as it was 500 years ago, which is, ludicrous on the face of it, to say the least. And yet, if we actually compared Columbus to others of his contemporary time and what other clashes of civilizations looked like, from the Mongols to the Russians to wherever, Christopher Columbus was probably one of the nicest guys you could run into from another civilization at the time. And it's true, Christopher Columbus worked to bring Christianity to these people who, let's face it, like we're just warring tribes. This whole idea of a stolen country, there's a great article in The Spectator at spectator.co.uk. It's called The Myth of the Stolen Country. I shared this on my Facebook page saying Happy Columbus Day, so I hope people enjoy that. But the writer Jeff Finn Paul asks, what should the Europeans have done with the New World? What exactly did you expect to happen? So men are not angels. Russell Kirk writes about this as well, that man's inhumanity to man is just something that stretches across time, and it's going on today, as we see. slavery exists in the world today. There's great crimes all over the world. Our civilization, not free from that. But you have to compare reasonably, and I think all of this demonization of Christopher Columbus, people have. I mean, they've been conditioned for so long, but maybe folks that are as old as I am, around their mid-30s, maybe we have enough memory to remember back when Columbus Day was not some imposing day. It was not a day where you you went around and made fun of indigenous people and said we won or something. Like, no, that didn't happen. It was a innocuous day where everyone got along because there was a sale going on. It's not a big deal. Take the day off work, buy a mattress, and everyone is treated equally in the market, right? I don't know. To me, it's another example of the left overreaching, where they have to come up and say, we have to get rid of Columbus Day. It's oppressing people. It's celebrating oppressors. And don't you stop and think, like, okay, aren't these people overreacting to something? Isn't there something more here? Are they really telling me the whole truth of their motivations and actually their goals in getting rid of Columbus Day and replacing it with really nothing, replacing it with an Indigenous Peoples Day? I mean, I don't know. To me, this goes at the heart of community in a grand sense. Our history as a country, over this time, obviously the peoples have changed in radical ways. The peoples of the United States have changed in the past 50 years, 100 years, 150 years. So the face of the country changes, but our history, there's still a glue there. And if you want to argue there's no connection to the history at all, it doesn't mean the history didn't happen. It doesn't mean that the history has no use for us today. So, we see finally the 1619 Project being exposed. The Pulitzer Prize that they won just was a joke, and people are pushing out for the 1619 Project to lose its Pulitzer Prize. So these are political vehicles, and I would encourage you to read a little bit about Columbus. I've got open in my tabs The Myth of the Stolen Country by Jeff Finn Paul at The Spectator, and at the imaginativeconservative.org, you can look up Columbus the Exemplar by Russell Kirk, and maybe you can find that elsewhere online. But yeah, Russell Kirk on Columbus. I'm not going to go all into it, but suffice to say, the caricatures of Christopher Columbus as an evil oppressor who, is basically some, street, what would you say, like a street menace or something on the world. It's not the case. I mean, it was the 15th century or early 16th century that he was there and that his impact was felt. And I just think it's a bit ludicrous to look back then and judge it any differently than to basically overall be thankful for what Christopher Columbus did. I mean, do we have to just totally underestimate the courage and the foresight that he had to go out? I mean, uncharted waters. And anyway, you get it. Did that sound like a Joe Biden moment there, where I just drifted off and said, I just don't want to go on forever. But okay, so are we tearing down Christopher Columbus? Maybe if it was only Christopher Columbus, then someone would say, what's the big deal? It's Christopher Columbus. You didn't even know about him until these people came along. And like I said at the beginning of the show, it's sort of a Barbra Streisand effect. More people are caring now about Christopher Columbus than they did just less than a generation ago. But now this revolt against Christopher Columbus, like I say, they are overplaying their hand and driving people to support Columbus Day, which is a good thing. But it's not just about Columbus. Just last night in Portland, we saw statues to FDR, the great Democrat hero, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That statue torn down. Abraham Lincoln's statue in Portland, Oregon, torn down. And, it's not just happening in Portland that these statues are being torn down. We've seen slave abolitionists torn down because they were white men. We've seen spray painted on these statues. They're removing these statues because they're white men. So it's very school grade level, identity politics, and they're so sure of themselves, and no one seems to be calling them out on it. But it's obviously a revolution, like a call it what you will, Jacobin, Bolshevik, whatever sort of revolution of just total destruction. And we know that it doesn't end with Columbus. So maybe that's enough on Columbus. But happy Columbus Day. I hope you enjoy it. Now, I want to move on to, where there's a different kind of destruction. And it's happening in California. California hasn't had that bad of riots and looting and arson. I mean, they certainly have. But compared to other hotspots in the country, California, maybe we expected worse. But nonetheless, people are fleeing California. My own story, my family, we moved. My wife and I, with 2 kids at the time, she was pregnant. We fled California. We fled and went to Fort Wayne, Indiana, where we are now. It's been about a year, actually, since we visited Fort Wayne and fell in love with it. So we've lived here now for 9 months and absolutely love it. But other Californians don't move here. I got to tell you, we like it. We don't need you. And just go to Nevada, go to Utah, go to Montana, wherever you want to go. But lay off over here. It's too cold. Okay, it's too cold. You wouldn't like it. But in all seriousness, Brittany Schaefer, writing at FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education, she asked, can California be saved from its politicians? And look, these politicians, Nancy Pelosi, going into the salon, getting her hair styled while she's pushing for all of these business closures. The same thing with Governor Gavin Newsom, keeping his own winery open during a time when wineries were ordered shut down. She lists a lot of these examples of hypocrisy, but also the police shutting down an 8-year-old's birthday party, or the police going out into the ocean and taking out and arresting a paddle boarder who was all by himself, under the guise of this COVID hysteria. So she lists these examples, and to me, this falls under a category of anarcho-tyranny. And that's a term coined by Samuel T. Francis that really just says non-crimes are pursued with a vengeance by the state, while as the real crimes really go ignored and are not much of a priority. And you can see in Los Angeles especially, but I think California really understands this. But in Los Angeles especially, you have these tent cities expanding, growing, just metastasizing in a way that it's not even incremental anymore. It's just all over the place. In the last 5 years, I lived in LA for 15 years, and in the last 5 years, it's off the charts. And so you have that where the public spaces are abused and taken over. People are running into these terrible elements of society, and that bottom element of society is more or less left to do as they will. And the middle and lower classes, the lower middle classes and the middle classes, what's left of the middle class, they are fleeing and leaving California, individuals and families, and they are leaving because they're getting nickeled and dimed on the roads. Almost anything that goes wrong, I mean, you're facing fines, increasing rents, and it's impossible to keep up. And they will come down on you very harshly, and you're dealing with the DMV one day, the Superior Court the other day, and so it's this nickel and diming. I know Adam Carolla has had this analysis, but I thought Brittany Schaefer took it on really well at the Foundation for Education, Economic Education, and she talks about the hospital closures and the increase in domestic violence and child abuse and other crimes and dramatic spikes in death from non-COVID-19 causes, all as a result of these lockdowns and mandates, putting people on house arrest essentially across the state. You've seen the meme now; it's reality. If it's not the state of California, it's Los Angeles. I can't remember which, but telling people to put their mask on in between bites at a restaurant. And so we have non-COVID-19 deaths, including cancer and deaths from despair and loneliness. These folks suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, and the suicides are going up. And you have these she writes that you have these incalculable losses. People's whole hearts are ripped out of their chests and thrown on the ground because the business that they built out of their passion was just destroyed. And we've seen this with like music store owners and so the arts have taken a big hit. You can imagine. I mean, there's a beautiful cafe in the Monterey area somewhere. I wish I knew the exact city, but a great cafe called Crema. And Crema is the most extraordinary cafe and the most, the greatest breakfast I've ever had at a little cafe that you wouldn't expect much from, but it's just extraordinary. And it's gone now for no reason, just over these lockdowns. And I think we all have, these little sob stories, but it's serious because it's not on par with other recessions that happened for some financial or economic reason. This was just a total government screw job run amok. So folks are moving. Where are they moving? I'm going to open up here from United Van Lines, this moving company. They say that the number one spots that people are leaving: Washington, D.C., New York, Nevada, Oregon, Delaware, California, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Florida, and Washington State. And where are these folks moving to? We don't know if these are just individuals, families, a mix, whatever, people who use United Van Lines. But they are going to these states. The top states people are moving into: Vermont, North Dakota. I mean, are these exciting places to be? Apparently they are. Connecticut, Montana, Michigan, Arkansas, Oregon, Massachusetts, Ohio, and Utah. All right, so we saw Oregon appear on both states. Massachusetts on both on both lists are Oregon and Massachusetts. So that's mildly interesting. But so you have folks obviously leaving cities, going where it's more affordable. There's some overlap between those two categories. But we've seen that families are getting crushed, especially there's no community there to, left to support them. And so people are going out and creating their own, or at least getting into where some remnant of community persists. And that is what this show is trying to chronicle. And so it's good to see that people have that freedom still where they can get up and go. And what I fear is if this election causes such a deep divide that there's some secession movement, and I'm for secession, but you do wonder at what point would secession actually put up even higher, more difficult walls for people to escape from where they currently are. So it might be a good idea to consider getting out sooner than later if you are unhappy with where you are. And that is one solution. As my family did. But what if instead of jumping these borders, we actually just let the borders jump around us? I mean, what if we redrew some of these political boundaries? California, Brittany Schaefer writes, could be split up into several different states. This was supposed to be on the ballot in the state of California a few years ago, and a judge struck it down. So it would have been nice to have seen how California voters would have reacted to that plan. And California is gigantic. But their state legislatures number just a little over 100. So you have less than, well below 200 legislators. I think it's like 120 legislators. Then you could talk about the governor and maybe like a few other, courts or something that would somehow represent people in some way in the government. But it's so minuscule and so centralized and really disenfranchising so many Californians. And they could really solve that problem by chopping it up and redrawing these political boundaries. Everything else in our society is decentralizing in a sense. Well, I shouldn't say that. There is some centralization. Besides these monstrous states like California and New York, you have the Amazoning of the economy. You have the Facebooking of our society, of the social life. So we do have a lot of these centralizing forces that we need to get away from, online and off, frankly. And we should be pushing nullification, secession, decentralization, and I've written about that for the Mises Institute and Daily Caller and the Advocates for Self-Government. So you can see some of those articles at nickhandkoff.com. I encourage you to look at those. But why did I choose Indiana? Well, I mean, look, no matter what your politics are, you can move about and find a better state. You know, if you like a blue state that's not totally out of control, there are some in the Northeast, as you see here. A lot of people going to Vermont. The United Van Lines showing us that a lot of people going to Vermont. And, you know, in my case, I chose a red state. I liked Indiana. I liked the freedom here. And it's, you know, it's a matter of finding a place where you can actually build community. And on top of that, it's like just letting California be California. I was tired of trying to change California. I worked for years with the Libertarian Party, years with the Republican Party. We even had successes. We had mild successes. So it's not like it was 100% hopeless, but it was basically 99.9. It was like the chance of survival under COVID. That's how hopeless it was in California. And I got tired of it. And, you know, my kids, I shouldn't put them through that. So we got out. But in a sense, we do want to give others the freedom to go their own way. And that should be the solution here. And, you know, in some cases, that means you have to move. If you don't like it, you got choices, get up and move. In others, it's like maybe we should get Sacramento and San Francisco and Los Angeles out of the lives of some folks in Orange County or some folks in Auburn or Northern California. Just a thought. All right, so Indiana. We have a gubernatorial race. That's for governor, for some of you out there. And we have a Republican governor already, so what could possibly be going wrong, right? Eric Holcomb is our current governor. He's pushed a mask mandate on the state and other regulations regarding COVID that have just destroyed people's lives and livelihood. And now that's forced a lot of people away from Holcomb, and rightfully so, into the welcoming arms of Donald Rainwater, the Libertarian candidate for governor. He's a pro-life Libertarian, and from my perspective, from the little I've seen, he's really gone in a different direction than the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, Joe Jorgensen, whose campaign is a joke. The Libertarian Party is a joke, and I say that as basically a libertarian. I mean, I might have paleo-libertarian views, paleo-conservative views, right-wing views, but essentially the Libertarian Party is just an embarrassment to libertarians. But here in Indiana, we have a great candidate for governor that, as far as I can see, Donald Rainwater, who's speaking harshly against these COVID lockdowns, talking about what he'll do, which is just totally peel them all back and let us, you know, live our lives again. And this contrasts with the Joe Jorgensen campaign, and that's why I'm voting for Trump for president. Joe Jorgensen hasn't channeled any of this. She's just been feeding into this leftist mindset that's just destroying any hope for liberty in the United States. And so she's too gullible. She falls into these narratives that it's just embarrassing that libertarians would fall for that. And the Libertarian Party now on a grand scale does seem like it's dividing the left more than it's dividing the right. So I see Trump supporters on Facebook commenting on Eric Holcomb's post on the current governor and telling him, like, I'm Republican, I'm voting for Trump, but I'm not voting for you. I'm voting for Donald Rainwater. So just a note there. I mean, that would be a stunner, of course, if the Libertarian won. And people say, you know, well, what if a Democrat wins? What if you actually do split the right-wing vote in Indiana and a Democrat becomes your governor? The safety net here is that our legislature is overwhelmingly Republican. And so I think with a Democrat governor, the state legislature would, you know, find its backbone and fight back. That's kind of how it goes. You know, you see Republicans pushing the deficit and the debt, exploding that on the federal level. And it's sort of the same thing here. It's like they only gain a backbone with Barack Obama's president, and then they'll say no or something. So, you know, to me, I think a vote for Donald Rainwater as a registered Republican, voting for Rainwater, I think it's worth the risk if a Democrat might become governor. I really do, and that is a real possibility. All right, I think I've said enough about just my own little life and the Indiana race. So, we've seen these rallies continue, and now another Trump supporter is dead, shot dead by another leftist. I mean, we saw this in Portland where the shooter became a fugitive, and then when the police came to get him, he basically died suicide by cop, brought his gun out against the police, and they killed him. Thankfully, in this latest case, it must have been October 11th, yesterday, in Denver, a so-called security guard, a so-called bodyguard, illegitimately, for a local news reporter, shot and killed an unarmed Trump supporter. And the Trump supporter had mace, but I think I could go look. I encourage you to go look. There's still footage, evidence coming out. I think we'll have to wait and see exactly where some of this gets confirmed. But, I think the gun was in the Trump supporter's face before any mace was sprayed. And if someone does spray you with mace, it's not self-defense to shoot them in the face with a gun. It's not. Especially in this context, in this environment where it's a patriot rally, and there's some words exchanged. I know the police were right nearby, apparently witnessed it as it happened. We'll see, but the police have been clearing up some online rumors that the shooter was not actually Antifa. He was a leftist. We can tell by his political history online. But in terms of how engaged he was, I think he went to a Black Lives Matter protest recently. But organized Occupy Wall Street stuff about a decade ago. But, we will see just how politically motivated this could have been. But again, it's the second time we've had a leftist pull a gun and shoot an unarmed Trump supporter. And so the narrative that we've been fed, that the right wing is the violent one, that Trump's stoking all the violence, and I just think it falls apart in examples like this time after time. And unfortunately, these are going to continue. I think this should be a lesson to anyone not to go to these things. Just don't go into the streets. I mean, this is the most foolhardy way to try and change society. I mean, we do see that they have an effect. People violently destroying towns, and now all of a sudden police are being defunded, so they seem to be getting what they want. But I think in the long run, this is not worth what's going on, especially if you're a normal human being. Don't get caught up that you have to somehow go out and necessarily defend something. I mean, we've talked about militias in the last episode. So if I had to give a blanket yes or no to go out there, I would give a blanket no with some yes exceptions rather than the other way around. But just let this be a lesson to you. You go out there with the best of intentions. And who knows we're lucky, I guess, that one guy was shot, not more in a sense. So be careful out there. And I think it's worth mentioning also in both of those cases, I almost forgot to say this, but in Denver and in Portland, both times when a leftist shot a Trump supporter and killed them, people celebrated. I'm not just talking about online. I'm talking about eyewitnesses feet away, celebrating on camera, cheering the death of a white supremacist neo-Nazi, when none of that is credible at all. It never is as a grand narrative, and it certainly isn't in these individual cases, So we see that. We see crowds supporting this kind of violence, cowardly supporting this. And what does that mean? I mean, it means either you're moving, you're fleeing some of these areas, or you're hunkering down and in the battle for your life and for your community's life. And in those cases, you need to join up with others, or you are, advocating a political strategy that involves something else other than voting in a new candidate. And I know I talked about voting in a new governor, but he's got a different program. But I just think, a radical decentralization is not that radical. I mean, we've had radical centralization for so long, and it's led us to this point. So with that, folks, I am going to wrap it up. I don't want to run too long, especially I know y'all are waiting to celebrate your Columbus Day, your great Columbus Day dinner. And you'll gather around, watch your favorite Columbus Day movies. It's that time of year. So I wish you all the best. God bless you. Thanks for watching. This was episode 6. Let me get my cursor over here ready, because I am not editing these videos in order to get them up faster. I'll be editing better, and I'll be doing some more high-tech things soon. But in the meantime, I wish you all a great, happy Columbus Day. Thanks for watching. Please share, please like, please subscribe. Check out nickhancock.com. Give me your email so we can stay in touch in case the worst happens. I mean, I could be shut down for celebrating Columbus Day. Can you believe it? But God bless you. We sure do appreciate you. Have a good one.